Hello, and welcome to It Matters How We Treat One Another, the social psychology show. I'm your host, Matthew David Vasco. If you have subscribed to this show on YouTube or your favorite podcasting platform, then thank you. We are grateful for each and every one of our subscribers. This episode features an interview with Kia Afcari from the Greater Good Science Center. Kia and I will discuss the overwhelming evidence in support of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how good it is for both companies and for individuals of all identities. But first, our inspiring news. If inspiring things are happening in your neck of the woods, then please send us a direct message on one of our social media accounts and let us know. You can find us by our show name on Facebook, Instagram, and X. This week's inspiring news comes from onlygoodnewsdaily.com. In their breakdown for the start of this week, they state that EV sales jumped in early 2025. Quote, electric vehicles sales grew by 30% in the first 2 months of 2025, according to Row Motion, the leading EV research house. China led with 1.4 million vehicles, that's 35%, while Europe's battery electric segment jumped 29%, and North American sales rose steadily at plus 20%, with the U.S. specifically seeing 28% growth in pure electric vehicles sold, that is. End quote. This is indeed inspiring news because it means that all over the world, people are looking to the future to clean cars that can run on 100% renewable energy. Again, if you know of inspiring news happening in your area, then please DM us on our socials and let us know. Thanks. Up next is our feature segment. But first, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Some years ago, I was struggling with depression. I knew I was depressed, but I had a hard time asking for help. It seemed like a huge hurdle to figure out how to access therapy services, and the thought of opening up about my depression made me nervous. I eventually did get brave and sought help. Finally, starting therapy was such a relief because knowing I had a professional in my corner helped me start to feel better after even the very first visit. Thankfully, BetterHelp is on a mission to make starting therapy easier. Fill out a questionnaire and you will match with a therapist in as little as a couple days. All you need to do is click the link on the description to get started. And BetterHelp is offering fans of this show 10% off your first month of therapy. All you have to do is visit betterhelp.com/itmatters. That's betterhelp.com/itmatters. And now our feature segment. My guest today is Kia Afcari. Kia is the director of Greater Good Workplaces at GGSC. He has over 25 years of experience helping leaders, teams, and organizations all over the world with DEI and other collaborative change efforts. Kia's TEDx talk on how we can reshape diversity, equity, and inclusion together has over 77,000 views, and he was awarded Chief Learning Officer Magazine's Silver Award for Innovation for his accomplishments in helping to shift the organizational culture of UC Berkeley's 8,000 staff. Welcome, Kia.
Thank you, Matthew. It's good to see you.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm so excited to be talking to you about this topic. I feel like this is a very important topic right now that is touching a lot of lives, right? Like lots of different workplaces, schools, universities are being affected by changes that are happening nationally, things that are coming down from the top. So I'm just so excited to have you here and to be talking about this topic. And of course, I saw your TED Talk and it was fantastic. So I'll be happy to talk to you about that as well. Are you ready to get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's just dive right in. So, my first question is diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, has been in the news a lot since President Trump started his second term. Can you help our audience understand at its core what is DEI?
Sure. Well, I think, you caught me at a moment, Matthew. I've been doing DEI work for about 25 years now. So I started doing it when I was about 25 years old in grad school. So it's been a long time in this work. And I've seen it go through all its different iterations, right? From diversity to DEI to DEIB and all these different monikers. I think, in my view, DEI, and if you add the B, in at the workplace, at its core, it's about fairness. That every human being should have a fair shot to be treated with respect, that their ideas are considered, that they have an ability to sort of move up in the organization, and that we sort of do away with discrimination. We allow all people to feel a sense of belonging. And we have some equity in terms of promotion and pay, the promotion and pay is tied to your performance, not to your identity. And so DEI really is about all people, and that includes white men and white women. No one is left out of DEI. And so all of this to me is really about creating a healthy organizational culture that helps you succeed, that is also good for your people. So I think that's what DEI and DEIB is for me.
Well said. That's so interesting that you say that about fairness. When I was putting together my questions for our interview, I thought that exact thought that went through my head. I thought, really, it's about fairness, isn't it? I mean, it's the same thing that we so often talk to our children about.
Yeah,
I mean,
basic
everybody
stuff.
wants the world to be fair as we can make it, right?
Yeah.
And that is DEI at its heart. It really is about fairness.
Yep.
The Greater Good Science Center sent an email in early March stating that, which was earlier this month, I should just for the sake of clarity state that, that the scientific evidence in support of DEI is, quote, very strong. Will you please share some of that evidence with our audience?
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I mean, I've always been a big fan of the Greater Good Science Center for many years, was a fanboy, and then recently joined Greater Good Science Center. So I feel really privileged to be here and be around all the scientists and the folks that are sort of curating the science on this. So a few things stand out for me in terms of the scientific evidence for doing DEI work. First and foremost, we know that racism is basically bad for your health, right? There are stress reactions related to physiological stress when people have bias. This actually leads to increased cardiovascular activity and can really lead to hypertension and cardiovascular disease. So it's just not good for you to be racist. It's not good for your own health. Number two, it turns out there's quite a few studies that show that diversity and inclusion makes us smarter. Now, if you just have diversity, it can actually lead to a drop in innovation and performance.
Hmm.
But if you have diversity plus inclusion,
Oh.
then you have often more time, more creativity, more diligence, more innovation, and improved decision making. So there's a lot of studies that really connect the combination of diversity and inclusion. So if you just throw a bunch of people into a room and it's a diverse group, you might not get the innovation that you want. But if you couple that with inclusion, then you actually get some benefits. And then lastly, I think there's quite a few studies that show that diversity is good for the bottom line. One of the studies that they did is on esports. Familiar with esports? Basically, video
Mhm.
game
Sure.
contests with groups of people from all over the world playing on teams. It's a big, like, sort of multi-million dollar industry. And they did a study of esports, and it turns out that um, basically single country teams were 30%, basically earned 30% less prize money than teams that were diverse from many countries. So it just shows that diversity can actually help with cognitive things like esports, where you're really trying to make things happen. And there's other studies that show really that companies with greater racial and ethnic diversity are 35% more likely to have financial returns above their national industry median. So this idea that it can actually affect the bottom line is really important. So quite a bit of research to show that this is a good thing to be pursuing. And unfortunately, there's a lot of research that shows that what we have been doing about it has not been working. So the why of diversity is very clear. The
Mhm.
how of how to do it, I would say we've had a lot of failure. The
Mhm.
DEI has not succeeded in the way that we wanted it to succeed.
I read that article in Greater Good about how being racist or prejudiced is actually bad for your health,
Yeah,
right? Because of the stressors involved over time. And that I felt like was probably something that we should scream from the rooftops, right? Like, it's bad for you to be racist. Don't be racist.
yeah,
Because I just thought, that really sort of sent the message home, right? That it's not just bad for others to be racist, it's bad for
absolutely.
the racist person,
Absolutely.
you know.
Yeah, and in many ways, racist people are victims of a system that pumps racist ideas into their heads, right? Right? We have a media kind of apparatus that is showing thousands and thousands of images of distrustful Middle Eastern men who are terrorists, right? You've probably seen thousands of images of that growing up in the United States. So it's something that's happening to people. It's
Mm,
just a question of being able to see it and wake up to it.
yeah, that's so true. In that same email from Greater Good, it said, quote, wholesale rejection of DEI would do enormous harm to people of all races and ethnicities. I thought that was a very powerful statement. In what way? In what way will it do enormous harm?
Sure. Well, I mean, it turns out that time and time again, so-called DEI policies and programs really have led to gains for all workers, or all people. So, for example, DEI in terms of college admissions um, has really benefited first generation college students a lot. And it turns out that half of first generation college students are white. And so DEI initiatives have really provided them with resources and support to get into college. Um, Secondly, white women have been the primary beneficiaries of DEI in the workplace. So that, I mean, although it's we haven't made as much gains as we should have. I saw this crazy article that showed that basically the percentage of white women in CEO roles just recently surpassed the number of CEOs named John,
Oh my goodness.
right? Right.
Wow.
So like, white women are slowly making gains into the C-suite. Now it's sort of around 19% of all C-suite positions are held by white women, whereas women of color hold about 4% of those positions. So DEI has benefited white women quite a bit, and we've still got more work to do. Um, there's also things called employee resource groups or ERGs, which have really benefited people of all races and all kinds. ERGs for veterans have really helped those folks do networking, professional development, and get mentored. Um, and then also, I'd say lastly, that DEI has led to flexible work arrangements that have really benefited all employees. So, it turns out that these kinds of things, when you make things better for a particular group, it often helps other groups as well.
Mm.
And so I think that's that's what we're talking about when we say it could benefit, it could harm all folks if we totally cut DEI programs.
Absolutely. I watched your TEDx talk in which you said that DEI is broken. Can you please share with our audience what you said is broken about DEI?
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, this is a kind of a big issue for me because, as I mentioned, I've been doing DEI work for 25 years, and part of this is implicating myself in this, that the things
Mhm.
that I have been doing have not been working. And so when I looked into this, I looked at sort of 50 years of DEI work and what are the results? Like, what are the actual outcomes, real hard benefits of DEI? And it turns out it's what we've been doing largely has been pretty ineffective.
Mm.
So, for example, the percentage of Black men in management and leadership positions has gone from 3% to 3.2% in 30 years.
Oh, wow.
Between 1985 and 2016, we've just had minor gains in terms of Black men in leadership and management. Um, Harvard's Dobbin and Kalev did a meta-analysis of anti-bias training. So these are workshops where people, we're trying to reduce unconscious bias, right? The thing that we said that is bad for your health. And it turns out that a lot of these workshops, especially when they were mandatory, did not reduce bias at all, and oftentimes had the opposite effect of what we wanted, right?
Wow.
So there's something about these kinds of workshops where oftentimes we're just making people feel bad about themselves. Like we're creating
Mm.
a lot of guilt um, that they're just not working. And I think, overall, the three things that I think are broken about DEI are number one, we've just thrown workshops at the problem, right?
Mm.
We want more diversity, equity, inclusion. Okay, just put people into a workshop, or we'll do a bunch of workshops, or we'll do like, African American History Month and Women's History Month, and we'll just do a lot of programming and activities. And we'll say,
Mm.
hey, look, we're doing all this DEI stuff. Right. We did it. We can check the box that we did it.
Mm.
And if these workshops aren't working, then that's a problem. Number two, like I mentioned, we've just made people feel guilty and bad at work. And it turns out nobody really wants to feel bad at work, right?
Mm.
You don't want to go to work and feel bad, right? And DEI is ultimately a change effort. We're trying to create some positive change in organizations. And one thing I know about change is change needs energy,
Mm.
right? You need people
Right.
long-term energy. And what these workshops often do is deplete energy. They make people feel bad and they don't know what to do with their feelings. And so that's one thing. Second thing that's broken about DEI. And then lastly, I'd say the third thing that's broken about DEI is we've been unclear about the why. Why are we doing this DEI work? Why are we investing so much in what I call sort of the DEI industrial complex? Um, I think, in the 60s and 70s, the why of DEI was, you know what, we might be sued for discrimination, so let's not get sued. Let's do these mandatory workshops so we don't get sued. In the 80s and 90s, the why for DEI was, you know what, this is morally the right thing to do. It was sort of the moral case for diversity. We want a more equitable society, and so we should do this. Now, the problem with that is people saw DEI as this kind of nice, warm, and fuzzy thing to do, but then there was their business, which had nothing to do with this warm and fuzzy thing to do, right? It always put DEI on the outside as something nice to do or good to do, but it has nothing to do with us succeeding as a company, right? That's a problem with that why. And then the last why, we've had between the 2000s to the present was really the business case for diversity, right? We're doing this because it helps with innovation, etc. Now, that makes sense to me in some ways, but the challenge with that is, well, if your business is doing poorly, does that mean that we stop doing DEI, right? That if it's only a business case, then that's a challenge. So getting clear about why each organization is doing this work I think, is really important. So those are the three things I think are broken about DEI.
So let's
And
talk.
I would just suggest if you really want to know more about this, I would read Lily Zhang, Zheng.
Okay,
They have written an incredible article in Harvard Business Review about a new model for DEI. So I'd highly encourage you all to read that.
excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
We'll put a link to that in the show notes. And then you propose, in terms of fixing DEI, you propose a three-prong plan to
Mhm.
fix DEI. Can you share that with us?
Sure. I mean, it's really related to what we just talked about. Number one, every organization should clarify why they are doing DEI work. And the first thing to start with is strategy. What's our strategy for winning as an organization or as a company? Once you clarify that, then it's like, okay, how does our culture and our DEI efforts actually help us win? How does it help us deliver on our strategy? So that unique why is different for every organization. But I think once you center DEI in terms of your organizational success, it's going to stick much better. It's going to make sense in people's minds
Mhm.
that leaders aren't just doing this as something on the side. They see this as crucial to their success. Number two, I would focus on impact and not on activities, right? What specifically are you trying to improve in your organization? Let's get really geeky with the data, right? Let's look at our promotion rates. Let's see where in the organization we need some help. Is it that women are not, in leadership positions as much as they should be, right? Is it because you really wanted to clarify what specifically you're wanting to work on and focus on the impact and not on the activities, right? Because having a Women's History Month event doesn't necessarily get women into leadership roles, right? So you have to match up your activities with the impact that you want to see. And then lastly, I would say the third sort of part of this is to focus on structures and not on shaming. And so to me, a lot of what gives me hope about DEI work being done now is instead of trying to sort of convince people to see the light through these workshops,
Mhm.
we create some structures that make discrimination and bias much less likely. And by structures, I mean things like rubrics. So let's say you are hiring or promoting employees. You can have a rubric for each one of those things. So for hiring, you can have a rubric that says, these are the kind of skills we want in this position. And I want all the interviewers to rate. this person on those skills. And so what happens is it becomes less about like, do I want to have a beer with this person? And becomes more about the skills, right?
Mhm.
And you can do the same for promotion. So having a rubric for what's what do I need to do to get to the next level in the organization? Oh, I need to have these, five, or I need to be able to do these things. It becomes you're basically removing bias from the situation as much as possible. And those kinds of structures make a much bigger impact than putting people into a workshop where they cry or they feel bad or I think those things have a lot more impact. Does that make
Those
sense?
all sound like they would be impactful.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So really, it's a methodology as much as anything, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see. Excellent. Excellent. And then I was just kind of curious about this, and I imagine as someone who's worked in DEI for a long time, you would have some insights. Why do you suppose that people push back against DEI work?
I think it's two things. First of all, people think that DEI is the opposite of what it's really about, right?
So,
So many people think that DEI is inherently unfair
mm,
because it's giving some people a leg up over others, when in reality, it's about fairness, right?
right.
Like people say, well, it needs to be a meritocracy. Absolutely, I 100% agree with you. DEI helps us get to a meritocracy, right?
Sure.
Because it's not like I just said, like a structure on promotion. That's all meritocracy. It's not about giving one group a leg up over the others. It's like, let's be fair about how people are moving up in the organization or how people are getting hired.
Uh,
So that's part of the challenge is people think it's about unfairness when it's really about fairness. And then the other thing that I think has led to a big pushback is that, and I heard John A. Powell speak recently. He's got a fantastic book called The Power of Bridging. Highly recommend it. Ultimately, we have created a situation where white men and white people feel that they do not belong,
mm,
right? That the DEI complex has made white men and white women feel like they're not a part of this, that we don't value them, that they don't have a place, that diversity somehow doesn't include them,
uh,
right? How could diversity not include white men and white women? That's what diversity is having a diversity of people, right?
mm.
So this pushback is because I think this country is changing. I think that in many ways, white men and women are losing their country because demographically they will be a minority in 2050, 2060. And so nobody wants to lose something. And if you feel that there's a certain size of a pie and that you're losing a piece of that pie, you're going to fight against that. So we have to do work that is more about belonging. We have to do DEI work that is more fun, that is more interesting, that really that brings joy to this work. Because what we have done is kind of created, and I implicate myself in this. We have created a lot of systems that makes people feel guilty, and that's not going to help with change. And so we need to make it about everyone belonging, everyone. Um, and that includes white people, white men, white women.
That makes good sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read an article that said that uh, based on a poll this company had done, um, that they came to the conclusion that pushback against DEI efforts often had to do with anxiety
Hmm.
because people were afraid of making mistakes,
Hmm.
doing it wrong, of inadvertently causing offense. Does that resonate with you at all?
Absolutely. Yeah. We've got kind of a culture where we're policing people's language and everything and not allowing people to make mistakes. And it's it we need I think we need to create a more collaborative version of DEI where to me it's a no enemies approach.
Mhm.
It's like an us. It's not an us them situation. It's an us situation. And this idea of being afraid to say the wrong thing doesn't really help anyone. I think people need to be able to make mistakes and learn and grow. So yeah, totally see that.
Thank you. Um, you know, the audience of our show tends to be people who want to create positive change in the world. And I was sort of curious as I was putting together the questions for this interview, what our audience might be able to do, sort of the average person in the workplace, right, might be able to do to help encourage DEI efforts in their workplace. What do you
Sure.
think about that?
Yeah, great question, Matthew. Yeah, I think for me, the number one thing that people can do in organizations is to be an upstander instead of a bystander. And what I mean by upstander is just how it sounds. Somebody who's willing to say something, to do something, to act. We have a lot of performative DEI in the world. And what we mean by performative is like, during Pride Month, everybody has their, rainbow flags up, and the company's like, oh yeah, we care about Pride. But what we really want to see is actions in the workplace that lead to real outcomes, right? So,
Uh,
for example, you're in a meeting and you notice that women are being interrupted. Um, to be an upstander is to say something and to learn to do that skillfully. So, we actually used to do workshops where we would create a scenario, like a little skit, where a woman was continuously being interrupted in a meeting. And we would be able to yell freeze, and anybody could jump in and try to be an upstander, right? So people could jump in and try to say, hey, you know what? I think, Susan wasn't done yet. Like, can you let her speak? So we try multiple ways because it's hard to say something in the moment. So we practice this through theater exercises to help people learn the skills of being an upstander. So if you notice that women are being interrupted in a meeting, if you notice that people of color are not getting a fair shot at leadership roles, you can advocate for them. If you feel that the hiring and promotion process is unfair and you've done the analysis and you see that it's unfair, you can advocate for rubrics, like we talked about earlier. These kinds of things in the workplace can make a real difference in someone's experience and also someone's career trajectory. I've worked in organizations where there were so many talented people from marginalized communities that like could not move up in the organization,
mm,
even though they were more qualified than their bosses, on every metric, right?
mhm.
And so, I think the average person can really be an upstander in these situations and advocate for those folks. And that can make a difference.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's a great note to end on, I think.
Yeah.
I love that idea of don't be a bystander, be an upstander.
Yeah.
It's powerful. Thank you. Well, we always like to end our interviews with some uplift, some feel good, some positive vibes, if you will. So I'm thinking maybe it's time for the feel good five.
Sounds good.
Excellent. Let's do it. So these are meant to be pretty rapid fire, just kind of top of your head, whatever comes to your mind. And it's always fun to see what our guests have to say on these five questions. Okay, here we go. What is your favorite feel-good song?
It's I Want You Back by the Jackson 5.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Great one. What is your favorite feel-good movie or TV show?
I loved Motorcycle Diaries, the movie. Motorcycle Diaries was a
Oh,
beautiful.
I love that one
Yeah.
too. Yeah, absolutely. That is feel good. What helps lift you up when you're feeling down?
Uh, Lots of meditation.
Oh, excellent.
30 minutes, an hour of meditation. Yeah, every morning.
Fantastic. What gives your life meaning?
Um, Really working at the Greater Good Science Center, just to, being a part of a group that is trying to spread more compassion, happiness, in the world, and kind of curating the science behind that. That gives me a lot of meaning.
Excellent. And what inspires you?
I have to say, I watch a lot of Premier League soccer. So when I see amazing soccer teams, I get really hyped and excited. That's very
Excellent.
inspiring to me.
I bet. Are you a Ted Lasso fan?
Love Ted Lasso, yeah, and I play soccer myself, so it's inspiring to me to get out in the field and try to be half as good as those folks.
I bet. Yeah. Fantastic. Good way to get exercise.
Yeah,
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kia. This has been an illuminating interview. I really appreciate your time and good luck to you in your work.
thanks so much, Matthew. It's been a pleasure.
This brings us to the end of this episode of It Matters How We Treat One Another. Thank you to our guest, Kia Afcari from the Greater Good Science Center. Learn more at greatergood.berkeley.edu. Please subscribe to keep up with all our episodes, and you can support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/itmatterspatrons or by shopping our Etsy store at etsy.com/shop/itmattersmerch. There are links in the description. Your quote of the week is, quote, "We all should know that diversity makes for a rich tapestry, and we must understand that all of the threads of the tapestry are equal in value no matter what their color." End quote. That is from poet and author Maya Angelou. In closing, as our guest Kia Afkari says, quote, "Be an upstander, not a bystander." End quote. And remember, treat everyone with kindness, respect, empathy, and compassion, and try for love and acceptance whenever possible. Be well, and much love to you all.